Some people don't get tested because they look weak. They get tested because they look calm. And to the wrong person, calm doesn't signal strength. It signals room. Room to interrupt you, room to push a little further, room to cross a line and see if anything actually happens. If you've ever noticed people becoming strangely comfortable disrespecting you, even though you stay composed, reasonable, and controlled, there's a psychological reason for that. And once you understand what's really happening, you'll start seeing the exact moment someone decides you're safe to test. But there's a part most people never realize. The first test almost never looks like disrespect. It looks harmless. When people test someone calm, they almost never start with something obvious. There's no open confrontation, no dramatic conflict, because that would be too risky. Instead, the brain uses a low-cost probe, something small. Maybe they interrupt you mid-sentence. Maybe they make a joke that slightly undercuts you in front of others. Maybe they ignore something you said and continue talking as if it didn't matter. To most people, these moments feel too minor to react to. So the calm person does what they have always done. They stay composed, they let it go, they don't escalate. But here's what the other person's brain just learned. Nothing happened. And in social psychology, that moment is incredibly important, because every interaction contains an invisible calculation happening in the background. How far can I go with this person before it becomes costly? If someone crosses a small line and nothing changes in the dynamic, the brain registers something powerful. This person absorbs pressure. And when someone absorbs pressure without consequence, the next test becomes easier. This is where most calm people make a critical mistake. They assume people respect their self-control. But that's not always what people are reading. When sometimes they're reading something else entirely, calm behavior can signal two completely different things depending on who's looking at it. To emotionally intelligent people, calm signals stability. It shows discipline, maturity, and control. But to someone who is insecure, competitive, or manipulative, calm can mean something very different. It can mean low danger. Think about how people test boundaries in everyday life. Someone talks over you once, then again later, then again next week. Each time the behavior becomes slightly more comfortable. Not because they consciously decided to disrespect you, but because their brain quietly updated its model of you. You became someone who doesn't push back. And when that perception forms, the social dynamic begins to shift. People stop treating your calm like authority. They start treating it like tolerance. And tolerance creates space. Space for interruptions, space for casual dismissiveness, space for behavior that would never happen with someone whose reactions carry visible consequences. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who start testing you don't believe they're disrespecting you. They believe they're responding to the signals you're sending. And those signals often come from something you think is a strength. People who rely on manipulation or dominance tactics rarely choose random targets. They scan the room, not for the weakest person, but for the lowest cost person. Someone who appears emotionally stable but unlikely to create friction. This is why the calm person often becomes the first person tested in group dynamics. Because the calm person usually values harmony. They don't interrupt back, they don't escalate, they don't embarrass people publicly. To most people, those traits look admirable. But to someone who operates through pressure and control, those same traits can look like safety. Safety to interrupt. Safety to push a little harder. Safety to experiment with dominance behaviors. And that's exactly what these small social tests are. Experiments. The brain asking, if I push here, will anything happen? If the answer is no, the experiment repeats. And over time, something subtle but dangerous begins to happen. The calm person slowly becomes something they never intended to be. Not the most respected person in the room, but the one people feel most comfortable overriding. In many groups, there's usually one person who unconsciously becomes the friction absorber. The one who smooths things over, the one who stays reasonable, the one who keeps the atmosphere stable when tensions rise. That role often falls on the calm person, because calm people are good at regulating emotions. They don't overreact. They don't create unnecessary drama. But here's the hidden cost. When you consistently absorb tension without pushing any of it back into the system, the group gradually adjusts around that. People bring more pressure to you, more interruptions, more last minute demands, more casual dismissiveness, not because they hate you, but because their brain has learned something very simple. You're the safest place for the pressure to go, and the safer you appear to push, the more comfortable people become doing it. But there's a deeper psychological shift happening here that most calm people never see. It has nothing to do with personality. It has to do with how the brain measures consequence. Human social behavior is heavily shaped by consequence detection. Your brain constantly tracks something called response cost. In simple terms, what happens if I do this? If someone interrupts another person and immediately gets corrected, their brain records that as high cost behavior. But if someone interrupts repeatedly and nothing changes in the interaction, the brain records it differently. It becomes low cost. Low cost behaviors repeat. That's why some people would never interrupt certain individuals, but will casually talk over others. The difference isn't personality, it's consequence history. The calm person often unintentionally creates a pattern where disrespectful behavior carries very little visible consequence. And once that pattern forms, social dynamics start adjusting around it automatically. This is why some of the most composed people eventually notice something confusing. The more patient they become, the less careful people seem to be around them. Status in social environments rarely changes suddenly. It shifts through micro adjustments. A slight interruption here, a dismissive comment there, someone ignoring your suggestion in a meeting, someone joking at your expense just a little more boldly. None of these moments feel big enough to react to individually, but together they create something powerful, a gradual recalibration of how people interact with you. And by the time the calm person notices the pattern, the dynamic has already changed. Now people feel comfortable speaking over them, challenging them casually, treating their presence as something stable, but not necessarily influential. The calm person didn't become weaker, but the room slowly learned that nothing changes when they are tested. And that leads to the most important realization in this entire pattern. Staying calm was never the problem. What mattered was something else entirely. True calm is powerful, but only when people also believe there are limits attached to it. The most respected calm individuals aren't the ones who never react. They're the ones whose reactions are rare but meaningful. When they speak, the room adjusts. When they correct something, the behavior stops. Because people know the calm isn't passive, it's controlled. There's a difference between calm presence and consequence-free tolerance. One creates respect. The other quietly trains people to push further. And the moment someone realizes your calm still has boundaries attached to it, the testing usually stops. Because the brain immediately updates the calculation. This person isn't just calm. They're calm with consequence. Now here's a question most people never ask themselves. Think about the last time someone interrupted you, talked over you, or casually pushed a boundary. Did they do it because they don't respect you? Or because your calm convinced them nothing would happen if they tried? Drop a comment with the word calm if you've ever noticed people becoming more comfortable pushing you the more composed you stay. Because once you see this pattern, you start recognizing the exact moment someone decides you're safe to test. And that moment changes how every interaction unfolds.